I grew up in a haunted house, in a haunted town. These are my stories. So, the house I grew up in was super haunted. It was over 100 years old. It was full of spiritual activity. It had spirits living in it, it had spirits coming through it all the time. I still don't know why, but even for a super haunted town like the one I grew up in, it was super haunted, like just full of ghosts. And I'm sure that I didn't meet all of them because there were so many. But one night, while I was alone in the house, I was curled up on the couch reading, I think. This house it wasn't cozy. It was too big to be cozy. And now that I'm away from it, all I want is cozy. Like, my house is super cozy. This place was not cozy. It had hardwood floors. It had pillars, like carved wood pillars. It had too many rooms. It wasn't like vast or anything. It was just big. It was just like a big old house. Like when you first came in, you were in the living room, I guess. But then like right off to your right, there was another room that also could be the living room, sort of like it was through an archway. There were archways in this house. And like, well, okay, you'd come up, there was a big porch. You come inside, you're in a little like entryway. Come through the entryway, through another door, you're in the living room. The living room has a fireplace. It has archways with carved wooden pillars on two sides, one leading to the second living room. We actually called it the piano room because, well, that's where the piano was. So, but this room, the piano room, it was so big. We used to put a Christmas tree. At Christmas time, we would put our Christmas tree right in the middle of the room. And we would get like such a big tree. And it still wasn't cozy. Like it was a big, huge tree in the middle of this room. And you could run around it, whatever. It wasn't cozy. It wasn't comforting. And I don't know, when you're surrounded by ghosts, I mean, a little comfort might have been nice, but whatever. So, anyways, I'm in the living room. The living room has a fireplace, it has a sofa, it has very small television on like a little cart that you could move in and out of the room. I don't know that it had any other furniture. I think we had a coffee table. Although I remember like the floor space being open, but maybe we like moved the coffee table off to the side sometimes. Or maybe like we got rid of it at some point. I don't know. It was weird. And there was a heater. This house had like those big old heaters, those big like old fashioned iron radiators, but it had a cover over it, like a fancy cover that was metal, and it had like a little design cut out all over it so the heat could come out, and big old windows on ropes that could fall at any moment and like take your hand off or something. Anyway, so there I am in this completely not comfortable living room, curled up on the sofa. The sofa also surprisingly not cozy. It was a Ralph Lauren sofa. It was yellow. It was like pale yellow, and it had this floral design, these like big flowers. It was pretty. Maybe it would have been cozy if the whole room hadn't been so like gigantic and cold. And we had very high ceilings. So high. I never touched the ceilings in that house. I would have had to get up on such a high ladder. So, okay. So there I am, all alone in the big house, reading a book. Books were a way of escaping. I could be in the big, cold, scary house, but I could have a book in front of me and I could fall into the world of the book and forget about everything around me for however long the book lasted. I don't remember what I was reading that day. Probably Stephen King. I always loved Stephen King because I could tell that he totally knew what he was talking about. A lot of his stories were they rang of truth, which is gonna sound freaky and scary. I mean, honestly, the place that I grew up isn't far from where Stephen King lives, so it's no mistake that Stephen King comes from New England. Put it that way. Anyway, so I'm all alone. I'm reading, curled up on the couch, and I'm hearing noises. But that was normal. I mean, this big old house was full of noises, and some noises were probably the house settling, as they say. A lot of times when you hear creaks and stuff, people are like, the house is settling, which is kind of creepy, but it's a thing. Or the wind rattling the windows, which sounds creepy, but it's a thing that happens. It's a big old house with I don't know, loose windows. Loose windows like loose teeth. And you get a strong wind and they rattle. And it's creepy, but I don't know. It's home. You get used to it. But the windows rattling, the house settling, those were noises that made sense. The noises that were really frightening were the noises that had nothing to do with being in a big old house. Like electronics turning on and off all by themselves, repeatedly. A stereo, a TV, a light. Now it's on all by itself. Now it's off. Now it's on again. And sure, you can try to explain that away. You can be like, hey, it's probably an electrical thing. But it wasn't. It was freaking ghosts. It really was. Lampshades spinning by themselves, cups rolling across the floor, back and forth, all by themselves. These are things I lived with on a daily basis. But those are things you can see. You can hear, you can see. So as I'm sitting on the couch all alone reading, I'm hearing stuff. I'm hearing doors opening and closing. Once again, we used to try to explain that away, especially my mother, because my mother is terrified of anything that she doesn't understand. She'd be like, oh, it's a draft. There's some kind of wind that's coming so strongly, so quickly in and out of a room with closed windows that it's opening and closing a door. Does that make sense? It doesn't really make sense. But sometimes when you're alone and you're really scared, you want to try to believe that stuff, even if you know you're sitting in a haunted house. So that night, I was feeling particularly scared. Sometimes I'm feeling really brave. Sometimes I would be feeling so brave and curious that I would just seek out whatever was going on. But sometimes I was feeling really scared and I was just like, nope, I'm not admitting tonight that this is real because I'm too scared to deal with it. I was telling myself that it was the cats. We had a bunch of cats, and that was one of the things that I clung to when I got real scared. I would be like, oh, all of those noises going on that sound like footsteps, doors opening and closing, banging on the walls, stuff like that. I would just be like, it's the cats. It's the cats. The cats definitely know how to make those sounds. I knew it wasn't the cats. I could feel in my gut it wasn't the cats. But I was just not having a night where I wanted to think about whatever was upstairs. So I'm already kind of terrified that night. And as I'm sitting there alone, something comes up to the foot of the sofa. And it is a ghost. I think it was male. It was stocky. It was like broad. Sometimes when I'm near stuff, I know stuff about it that I can't like fully explain. It's just stuff that like I just know for some reason. So I felt it was male. I felt it was Native American. It looked like it had long hair, and it looked like it was really muscular. The town I lived in, actually more than the town, like the whole area that I lived in, had been used by the local Native Americans before it was settled by the Europeans as basically a graveyard and a place to go find the Great Spirit, to go on like spirit quests. It wasn't a place where people lived. You weren't supposed to live there. So I guess actually that's probably why it was so fucking haunted. Actually, my God, I'm telling this story. I'm sorry. I've told some of these stories to like people that I know, but I've never told them in this way where I'm like recording myself, and it's making me like just more self-aware. And I'm realizing as I'm talking about this that like our fucking house, our fucking town was literally on an Indian burial ground. Talk about a Stephen King trope. Like, wow. Okay. Gosh, the things you grow up with that like you just take for granted, and then you get away from them for a few years and you're like, what the fuck, dude? Right? You normalize stuff. So this ghost comes up to the foot of the sofa, and I am not in the mood. I'm not feeling brave. I'm not feeling like I want to talk to it or find out about it. I am just freaking scared as hell. So I've seen a lot of like different kinds of ghosts and spirits or whatever, and they look different. This kind of ghost I've only seen twice. And the second one that I saw didn't even look human. This one looked human. It looked like a broad male, probably like not super tall, not taller than 6 feet. But here's the thing about it. It didn't have any features. It was like a shadow, but it wasn't on the wall. It was like black, translucent figure, and it could just move around the room, be in that. So all I could see was, its outline because it didn't have any features. So it comes to the foot of the sofa. I'm staring straight at it. My fear is like rising up through my chest. But of course, I've encountered stuff like this before. So even though I'm terrified, like I know I have to do something. I'm not just going to sit there and like I didn't know what its intentions were, but I wasn't going to just sit there and let it like do whatever it wanted. I was scared, so I wanted to get rid of it. So I just started screaming at it. And I don't remember well, you know what? I'm pretty sure I was basically just telling it to get the fuck out of my living room. Basically, I was just like screaming at it to get the fuck out and leave my living room. I knew it wasn't going to leave the house because I could tell that it was something that probably lived in the house. It didn't feel like one of the ghosts that like was just passing through. It felt like something that lived upstairs and had come down to talk to me probably, and I was not in the right place for that at all. And so I just screamed at it to leave. And for a while it just stood there. At least minutes. I mean, when you're panicked like that, when you're scared, like it's hard to tell how much time has passed. It definitely stood there for at least like 5 minutes. Could have been an hour. I don't really know. But it stood there looking at me, I guess. I felt that it was staring at me. Even now, I feel like it probably wanted to talk to me. It could have wanted to hurt me. It could have wanted to attack me. I don't know. But it did stop at the end of the sofa. So, whatever it was trying to do, I don't think it just wanted to attack me. Like, it obviously wanted to, like, be known or whatever. So, I screamed at it to leave. It stood its ground for a while, and then eventually it left. I can't remember how it left. I can't remember. I think I like vaguely remember it literally like going toward the stairs. I don't remember seeing it climb the stairs. I don't know. Again, when you're like that scared, I think that like your ability to process what's going on can definitely be affected. Anyway, so it left, but I could feel it. Here's the thing. Okay. So I could feel the stuff that was in the house, but there was a lot of stuff. So it wasn't easy for me to differentiate because it's not like all the ghosts were just like standing in front of me in a line. So like, okay, so we had these attics upstairs. So, okay, so you go upstairs. There wasn't like an attic above the house. It was like the upstairs had attic rooms in it. There were 2 attic rooms. One of them was off of this creepy little hallway. If you went up the stairs to the right, there would be this creepy little hallway with a window looking outside and the door to an attic room. The other attic room was attached to one of the bedrooms. Actually, it bordered 2 of the bedrooms, but the door to it was literally inside one of the bedrooms. Super creepy, right? So there was something really terrible that hung out in the attics, lived there. And I don't know, I think there was definitely like more than one thing that lived in the attics, but there was one thing that was really, really bad. And I don't know if that's what that figure was or not. I mean, I feel like if it was the really, really bad thing that I sensed, I probably would have known it, but it's hard to tell. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't talk to it, so I don't know. And I never will, because guess what? I'm never going back to that house. All right, my little skelly babies. Until next time, this is Slayer Sparkles signing off. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Keep your eye out for the next episode of Growing Up Haunted. Bye-bye.